Welcome back to Friday the 13th Metalheads. So today we've got a great interview for you, especially if you're a fan of progressive metal. This is a project from Greece called VASS-KATSIONIS. It's Bob Katsionis from Firewind, along with Billy Vass, born in America, of ancestry from Greece. Now, these guys have released 2 albums on Symmetric Records. You can get them from Bandcamp Records. So they've done 2 albums. The first album was released in 2022 called Ethnic Dilemma. Great album. And the new album's called Cynical, which was released in 2023. Now, if you're a fan of Fate's Warning, these guys are for you, especially if you're into the Inside Out album, Parallels and Perfect Symmetry. Check this interview out. It's a fantastic interview with singer Billy. So, Billy, thank you for the interview. Best of luck for the future for the project. Thanks for watching, Metalheads. Be safe. More interviews coming soon. Thanks for watching.
Doing?
I'm good. Hey. How are you? I got the old backdrop there for you.
That looks great. Yeah, that looks fantastic. I wasn't expecting that one. I should have that behind me, not you.
Well,
that's great. That's great. Thank you. Thanks
cool,
for that.
Cool T-shirt as well. You're wearing.
Yeah, this is an original, man. I got this back in like 89, 88, 89. I brought this back with me from the States.
So I'm going to ask you some warm-up questions. First of all, I'm talking to Billy from VASS and Katsionis. Is it? It's real hard to say that name.
You could start off by saying cats and then say onus. Katsionis. Yeah,
all right.
Katsionis.
VASS and Katsionis. Sorry. Here we go. So YouTube channel.
That's so a lot Billy, better, yeah.
Where are you from originally? Are you American or Greek?
Yes. Jason, I was born and raised in the States. I'm from Queens. I'm from Astoria, Queens, New York, and but from Greek descent. I was the firstborn in the States from my parents. And during I think it was like 99, I decided to come back here to the homeland and live with my parents, with my family for a while, because they were getting older, and I wanted to spend some time with them. And it was time for a change, actually. I had to leave the States and I wanted to come back here and spend some time with the family.
That's cool.
Here, of course, is Athens, Greece. So I left the States from New York and I came here to Athens, Greece.
So you'll probably know quite a lot of bands from New York, because I know a few bands like Hitman and Leeway and fucking shitloads of bands from New York.
Yeah.
Hades, Wicked Mariah.
Inner Strength, Sahara, absolutely. Yeah, Thin Line, a whole bunch of bands. Yeah, the original underground bands, 80s, 90s bands. Actually, it's really funny that you said Hitman. I used to work in the same supermarket with the guitarist. We worked in the same supermarket together, actually.
Was that Jim?
Yeah, actually it was. It was Jim. Sure. And we would go back and forth about how things are. This is of course back in the late 80s, early 90s phase. And they were really tired of everything, actually. But my band was just beginning at that time, and his was, Hitman had already, put out the albums, had already toured and done everything. And he's like, dude, you got to understand something, man. I totally understand, how you see things, through the videos and, of course, magazines, heavy metal, Kerrang, and all that stuff, because there were no, MTV wasn't playing any metal or anything like that at the time. And he's like, you got to understand that, it's not what it seems. It's not what it looks like. It's a business. And I was like, come on, Jim, you got to be kidding me. Don't you dream about this? He goes, yeah, we all dreamt that. We lived it. And it wasn't at all the way we actually thought it would be. So he goes, since you're pursuing this, he said, you got to be really careful and just understand that at some point, all dreams don't come true. He was like, he was pretty pessimistic about the whole thing. But you know what? After, 25, 30 years, here I am. And he's absolutely right. So I came straight to his words. Everything that he said came true. Yeah, those are great bands, man. And like you said, Long Island, we used to do a bunch of rehearsals out on Long Island. We rehearsed in the same rehearsal space and studio that, of course, Dream Theater, when they were Majesty, rehearsed at. Met all the guys, fantastic guys, and all that. I got tons of stories. I don't know, we could have like 3 episodes of your YouTube interview about Dream Theater and Fate's Warning and all the great bands.
We're talking to Billy Vass from VASS-KATSIONIS.
All right, that's a little better, right?
So thanks for doing this interview, Bill. So I'm going to ask you some warm-up questions first. As a singer, because you've just said you come from New York, which singers inspired you, and were there any vocalists or family members that played instruments when you were growing up?
All right. Yeah, my grandfather here, of course, a Greek grandfather. He was a guitarist. They had an acoustic guitar, you know, it was totally unstrung and everything, but they did the best they could. I know my grandma used to tell me, I never met my grandfather, but she told me he was a really, really good singer and a pretty good acoustic guitar player. See, back in those days, they, you know, of course, they didn't have electricity, they didn't have any radios, they didn't have any transistors or anything like that. So everything came out live musically. So he learned how to play the guitar so he can serenade my grandma. I mean, it's a total, you know, romantic 1903, you know, situation and stuff. But so that, you know, my heritage had music, of course, in the veins. And as I was growing up, I was really triggered by Byzantine music. I really liked the Byzantine chanting, so I became a chanter in the Greek Orthodox Church. That's basically how I started at around 12, 13 years old, realizing that I had a pretty good instrument, a pretty good vocal tool that I could use. And then of course my brother, who's a hippie, he was into 70s music, and I grew up with all the great 70s bands, American and English, and you know, of course, Robert Plant, one of my vocal gods, Ray Gillen, Klaus Meine from the Scorps. I mean, a whole bunch of vocalists. That's when I knew that I was keying in on the vocals on all of these great albums and all these great bands. And that's when I started singing along with them. And I was like, wow, you know what? I can hit these notes. I can actually do this. I can do it just like him and whatnot. And that's basically how I started understanding that I wanted to be a vocalist, you know?
Did you learn to play any instruments, or was it just vocals? That was it.
Actually, just vocals. I would always bang, you know, pots and pans with spoons and forks and knives as a drummer and all that, because I really love the rhythm also. So yeah, I started messing around with like fake drum kits and shit like that. But an actual instrument, I never sat down to learn how to play. I can strum and I can, you know, dabble a bit, but I'm not going to say that, you know, I would be able to go out and play or, you know, sit on the piano and hit a couple of chords just to see vocally where I'm at if I want to write a vocal melody and whatnot. But I'm not going to consider myself an instrumentalist or a musician of that kind. I really focused in on my vocals, and of course that's why I ended up going to my teacher, my vocal teacher, Tom Perry Vocal Studio out of Long Island, New York.
Okay,
Yep.
then. So when you think about heavy metal singers, who's inspired you? I mean, obviously Ray Alder and John Arch.
Right, of course. Yeah, when those guys started popping out, you know, of course Jeff Tate, and afterwards, you know, James LaBrie, when he was with Wild Rose from Canada, I was listening to those vocals. I was like, wow, you know, this is great stuff, because I started hitting like really high notes and powerful notes and screeching and screaming and all that stuff when I was younger, just like those guys. And yeah, those were my vocal gods, let's say. After the 70s, you know, the 70s guys passed. Um, like I said, you know, Zeppelin, Doors, Deep Purple, Dio, Ronnie James Dio. My God, I mean, all of these vocalists. They were, you know, I was keying in on that '70s sound. I really love that vintage '70s sound. And then, like you said, when heavy metal rolled around and they started hitting those astronomical notes and the 4-octave ranges were going off, and I was like, wow, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna take the '70s and I'm gonna push it into this, and I'm gonna really push myself. And that's when I started going to my vocal teacher, and he said, okay, you want to really sound like these guys? You want a 4-octave range? All right, this is what you got to do. And I sat my ass down. I did exactly what my teacher was telling me. I took 3.5 years, 4 years of vocal lessons with my teacher. So, you know, everyone can hear the results, of
So
course,
you got Rob Halford.
in my live performances and my albums.
So you got like Rob Halford as an inspiration, obviously, as Dio.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Of course, Dickinson. I mean, the classics are definitely there, definitely, definitely. But I would key in, like you said, when I started recording albums and you know performing live a lot. I understood that, you know, I had the range to hit like the Ray Alder, Jeff Tate, and James LaBrie stuff with inserting my Dio influence into it, my Robert Plant influence into it, a whole bunch of that, you know, going on around in my vocal presence, and you know, the result is like I said, quite clear.
Excellent. So what was your first band then, Billy?
You mean what were they called?
Yeah. What style of
Oh
music
my,
was you doing?
oh my God. Well, of course, I started off with like tribute bands out in New York, and we would play like Bon Jovi. That's when the Sunset Strip, the whole glam scene started kicking in, right? And we did the whole Bon Jovi thing, Rat, Poison, Winger. We started doing the Hairspray stuff and all that, and I would start singing like those guys with the spandex and everything, and the earrings and the makeup. I did all that, went through all that with the tribute bands mostly.
So you were basically trying to get all the girls in with the spandex
Yeah,
and
well,
shit.
of course. I was like, 17, 18 years old. What the hell else would I get? Of course, yeah. You had to become the chick magnet, So
Yeah.
I went through that phase also. I had a lot of bands. I was in like 4 or 5 bands at the same time. I really can't recall, like names are popping in my head, popping Shadows, and then there was the Thin Line, and then I was with them. Then let me see what were they called? Man, this was like 40 years ago, Jason. I mean, I can't remember what I ate yesterday. Anyway, a whole bunch of bands, because of course they would come to a live show. A band would come to a live show looking for a singer. They would hear me. They'd be like, we want you in the band. Come to the band. And I'd go and rehearse with them 5, 10, 15 songs. I'd play live with them. And then a bunch of other bands would come. Hey, we need you in the band. Come on. And I would I'd be a band whore. You know what I'm saying? There's like 5, 6, 7 bands with Billy Vass as the lead vocalist. So names really did not matter to me, to be quite honest with you. As long as the look was correct and the sound was good and they were good musicians. And we played what we loved at the time. A bunch of bands. Afterwards, of course, when I got into recording albums and stuff, everything changed after that.
So what was your first band recording?
I did a demo with my band back in the States. When the guitarist and I, we couldn't find a bassist, we couldn't find a drummer in time, because we had booked the studio for 2 days straight, and bassist canceled out on us. The drummer got sick and whatnot. So I played the drums on the demo and sang, of course, and the guitarist played the guitars and the bass. And that was what was that called? It was just us two. So it was quite like I still have the demo cassette actually. But I don't have a cassette player, of course.
I need to check it out. I need to check it out if it's on YouTube. That's why, a lot of people are interested.
Actually, I think I uploaded on my YouTube channel when I did have a cassette player, and I did the whole cassette sound audio to the computer to record the cassette. It was a 3-song demo. It was back in, what was that, 87? 87 or from 87 to 90, I think that was at that period where we jumped into the studio and we recorded this. We didn't have a name because it was just us two guys. But I do have, I think there's a song called Shadows uploaded, and another one called Your Eyes, I think, on my YouTube channel. Those are the demos that I recorded, which is what we're discussing right now. But the project never really had a name, to be quite honest with you, because it was just us two in the studio. And then, of course, when I came here to Greece, to make a long story short, the first album that I recorded here in Greece was the first Terra Incognita album, which became my band afterwards.
All right, I've never heard them, so can you just enlighten me? It's not very often. Sure. I don't really hear any bands.
Yeah, well, we started off like really, it was an underground sound. It sounds, there's like doom in it, there's heavy metal, there's epic, there's power, there's an actual grunge sounding song. It sounds very grungy, they told me. The band is called Terra Incognita. The first album, the debut album, is called Barren Land. And I have uploaded some stuff, if I remember correctly, on my YouTube channel from that album. I have a couple of CDs still left over. And that's my original band. After that, we recorded an EP, and then we recorded a second album after that with a completely different lineup. So Terra Incognita has 2 albums and an EP. Yeah, the first album, debut album, is called Barren Land. The EP in between is called Sign with Blood, and then the second long play record was called Fragments of a Ruined Mind. which is a concept album of a book called I Strad. It was the whole vampire thing going on and everything. It's pretty cool, actually.
So what label released those?
The debut album was released by RPN Records here in Greece. The EP was picked up by Symmetric Records, which is Bob Katsionis, and the LP, Fragments of a Ruined Mind, was the Virgin Popper for Bob Katsionis' record label, Symmetric Records. Fragments of a Ruined Mind of Terra Incognita was the first official album that record label issued. It's Terra Incognita, Fragments of a Ruined Mind 001. That was the serial number. That's the first album, the debut for the label Symmetric Records.
Right then, so I'm going to ask you how you teamed up with Bob. Was it just the fact that you had a label, records with his label, and that's how you hooked up to do this project? Is it a project or is it a band?
Which one? VASS-KATSIONIS?
Yeah. Is it a band or a project?
No. It's a project. It's a project. Right. You never know. Maybe with the third album we might become a band. Who knows? Right now it is a project. And that's how my collaboration started with Bob. It was like about 10 or 12 years ago, where the EP came out. Like I said, Terra Incognita EP came out. That's when he raised his eyebrow at what we were doing, and he was like, this sounds pretty good. And then we decided as a band to go and record in Bob's recording studio, which at the time was at a different location than where it's at now. But we decided to. We heard, of course, everything else he had done musically and production wise, and we were very pleased with the outcome with whatever he did with the other bands. And we were like, you know what? We want that sound. We want that production for our second album. And that's how my collaboration started with Bob. It was through Terra Incognita. It was through my band. And after that, the band went out and toured Europe for this album. We actually played the States at one point. We went to Baltimore, opened up for Ashes of Aries. Matt Barlow's Barlow's band at a festival. And when that was all over, this is where we're going into the VASS-KATSIONIS phase. I was at a crossroads. The band had, completely diminished after the tour. After the second album, it went quite well. Everything was at a breaking point, to be quite honest with you, between the band members. We were like, okay, we're either going to stay together and write a third album, or we're just going to split, because this is, it was just way too tiring to go through everything we went through. It was like a 3-4 month stint, and it took a lot out of us, to be quite honest with you. It really did. Hitting festivals, hitting clubs, the whole bus thing, the whole tour thing, the whole planes, the airports, left and right. It was, and a lot of most of the members in the band just couldn't handle it anymore, to be quite honest with you, Jason. So we decided to break the band. The members left. I stay. Of course, the name stays with me, and that's where Bob was like, what do you want to do? It's about time you came out something. You came out with something, with some kind of production, something musical. What are you going to do? Are you going to come out with a third album as Terra Incognita, or do you want to do something else? And I was like, you know what? I was always wanting to break away from like the sound that the Terra Incognita band had in its albums, and I wanted to go into a much more progressive direction. So I said, why should I take the name Terra Incognita and everything that it's built on and change it just because I want to play progressive or write progressive music? I said, let's just leave Terra where it is. Let's just put it in the fridge for a while, cool it off, and let's just look at I told Bob, let's come out with my first solo album. I'm nothing special. I'm not famous, but you know what? I'm not going to name whatever I come out with as Terra Incognita, because it's not Terra Incognita music. I want to write something else. I want to do something completely different. Let's just call it Billy Vass. Let's just, my first solo album. And the end result was the first album, Ethical Dilemma, which in fact, Bob was so pleased with the outcome of it. He said, I don't think this should come out with just, one name. Let's just put both names. I was like, hell yeah, of course. Put my name next to, Katsionis. That's fine by me. Perfect. And that's how the whole VASS-KATSIONIS project started, Jason.
All right, then. So you've got like other band members. You've got, is it Tellis on bass guitar, and you've got Bob on, Bill on drums. How do you meet these guys? Right.
Okay, so the first album, Unethical Dilemma, we came up with, Bob and I said, okay, so what are we going to do for about a bassist and a drummer and whatnot? And he goes, we both said the Telly Kafkas right away, the bassist, 5-string incredible progressive metal bassist. He's a session player. So right away, we picked him up right away. We said, we got to use this guy. And you asked me about my bands in the States. In like 3 or 4 of my bands, I had my great friend Bill DiBenedetto, great drummer. When he wanted to, he could play really progressive. He was like jazz oriented, so he could play just about anything. And he came straight to mind. And I told Bob, I said, why don't let me hit up my old drummer from the States, because I'm pretty sure he can, he could match our abilities on this album, on Ethical Dilemma. I sent him a couple of tracks. He sent me back, whatever he did as a demo, and I sent it to Bob, and he's like, wow, this fucking guy, he's really good. I think we should use him. And I'm like, he's got my vote. So that's how we recruited Bill DiBenedetto on the first album, Ethical Dilemma. That, of course, changed with Cynical Silence, because we took a completely different approach to this album. And we wanted, playing progressive metal drums. It's a signature sound. Bill DiBenedetto has his signature sound implanted on Ethical Dilemma. With Cynical Silence, we wanted a different signature sound of progressive metal drumming. We wanted something heavier, something not as jazz oriented, let's say, as Bill is actually. And on the second album, we came up with the ex-drummer of the drummer of ex-Terra Incognita drummer, Ross Lagos. He's on Cynical Silence, and Bob actually plays the bass. We didn't bring in Tellis for this album. So there's 3 musicians on the Cynical Silence album, as opposed to Ethical Dilemma, which there are 4.
Right, because the first album, you've got. I did actually review the second album for you, as you know, but it's so much like Fates Warning, and that's not a bad thing, because Fates Warning are one of my favorite bands with Psychotic Waltz, and it's very perfect symmetry and parallels. Do you agree with both of them albums?
Absolutely. That was our target. That was our target with Bob. I said, this is what I want to sound like. He goes, great, I can do this. We could zoom in on this exact era, this exact sound of this most perfect band, and I'm glad that the outcome came out the way, because everyone says the same exact thing you just did, Jason. It's from that era. It's Definitely. Like a forgotten album from that era,
Maybe a bit of it came out. Maybe a bit of Inside Out as well. That was a good album. Can have a little bit of that in it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, our core agenda, let's say, for Ethical Dilemma was hitting that perfect Fates Warning, early 90s, mid-Ray Alder era in Fates Warning. We really honed in on that. That's what we wanted to sound like on Ethical Dilemma. Of course, Cynical Silence is a completely different thing, completely different animal.
I mean, when I first heard the first album, I had to laugh. Like you said, it was just like, this is Fates Warning. This is a Greek tribute to Fates Warning.
You're absolutely right, and I'll take that as a compliment.
I would love to know what Ray Alder and Jim Matthias and the boys think if they've heard them. They must have heard them.
I would love to see the reaction, of their faces. You're absolutely right, just to see, what they would say. I'm sure, like, the first word that would pop out of their mouth is like, wow. Just right away, just to hear, like, when did we write this? And, we never heard it again or something,
They'll probably listen to it and probably think we should have done this instead of the X album, V1 album, or this. But I will be asking Ray when I mentioned the Ray on Wednesday when I'm interviewing, I'm going to mention your band and say, have you checked out this band from Greece?
That would be great, right? That would be, I would definitely love to see his reaction. I don't think he's heard of us, but you never know. Maybe he'll tune in after the interview and just out of curiosity, see what VASS-KATSIONIS is all about.
Well, you'll be able to watch his reaction on Wednesday when I've interviewed him, because when it's online, you'll get a plug and you can sort of like laugh and think, oh, shit.
Excellent.
So the very first album, then, Ethical Dilemma, who came up with the title?
Everything that has to do with lyrics, words, and ideas are all mine. They're all from this noggin right here. It's self-explanatory, to be quite honest with you. I want the titles of my albums, whatever I come out with, to be self-explanatory. I mean, I want the person who's going to pick up the album, read the title, and say, "Oh, you know, this is quite interesting. Is, you know, are these lyrics all about an actual ethical dilemma that somebody might be going through?" And that's exactly what the first album, lyrically and concept-wise, is all about. Most of the songs are based around personal ethical dilemmas or general ethical dilemmas. So that's how the title came out.
When I'm looking at the album cover now, and it definitely reminds me of the Fates Warning cover, the one with the umbrella, a pleasant shade of grey.
That's exactly right.
Is that what you was looking at?
That, of course, absolutely. You hit the head right on the nail, man. Absolutely, that's what we were going for. And actually, I wanted to keep the guy with the umbrella as our concept, you know, as our constant straight through our album covers. But of course, Bob disagreed. He went into the whole AI thing with Cynical Silence. I lost every argument about that, obviously. If you see the Cynical Silence album cover, which is right behind you, and thank you for that, Jason.
You're welcome. I was going to put the ethical album behind me, but it didn't look quite as good as this one.
Yeah, no. You're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, that's it's everything about VASS-KATSIONIS is concept. Everything, the music, the album covers, the lyrics, everything is concept oriented.
It's a great production as well. So from the first album, do you have any favorite songs, Bill?
From the first album, you know what? If I had 10 interviews with the same exact question, I'd probably answer 10 different songs. You know what I mean? I don't think that I would be able to pick from this interview and the interview before this one or the interview after this one the same exact song, to be quite honest with you. But to you, I will say, I really love how we took the song Purify, which is of course so parallel to Point of View from Parallels from Fates Warning. Musically, of course, right? And the feel that you get when you start hearing that song. But I love the way that the vocals are written around that song, the music around that song. It's got a great bridge. It's got a very, very strong chorus. Right off the top of my head, that would be right now, this moment with this interview to Jason, my favorite song off of Ethical Dilemma. If you ask me in 3 days, I'm probably going to give you another title, another song for another reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So how long did it take to record this album then, Bill?
What did it take? You mean vocally or production-wise or musically?
Everything, just everything.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it took more than 2 months.
Right.
That's just how well Bob and I write, how well we sync, how well our songwriting abilities just merge. When he writes music and I write vocal melodies and lyrics to it, it's just that magic that you just can't, you know, you can't bring to words. It just happens. And just like the first album, just like the second album, we didn't do much changing, to be quite honest. There was no back and forth. It would be Bob writing a whole song, sending it to me. This is the writing process. I don't know if it's one of your questions, but I'll blurt out the answer anyway. The writing process is quite simple between Bob and myself. He writes the music, full songs, not just ideas or riffs or whatever. He writes full songs, sends them to me. I send a full song back to him. In other words, he writes the whole body of music, 4, 5, 6 minutes, 7-minute long body of music. He sends it to me. I put in my input, which is the vocals, melody lines, and whatnot. And then the song is actually, a VASS-KATSIONIS song is actually born. Just that in those three movements, him to me and me inserting my input, and then the song is born, just like that, with very few differences in between. Like, let's say, you know, differences like, hey Bob, you know, instead of 12 measures, let's make this 8 here, or let's move this little bridge here and let's put it there because I think, you know, vocally it sounds, but things like that. Nothing like to the sound of, wow, this is crap, or, you know, I really don't like it, or I only like half of the song, do something else with those vocals. I hate those lyrics. There's nothing like that, which is fantastic. You know, that's the magic and the chemistry when you have a project. You know what I'm saying? Or otherwise, don't have a project, you know, don't make it a project. Just, you know, do your own thing. That's how well Bob and I work.
All right then. So did the first album sell well for you? Because it's on Bandcamp, isn't it? It was only limited to 300 copies.
300 copies sold out. First edition has been sold out. We did print second edition. And those are what's being sold now from the Bandcamp page from everyone who's checking us out for the first time with Cynical Silence. I see a lot in the Bandcamp page where I see that they picked up Cynical Silence, and you scroll up and the album right under Cynical Silence is Ethical Dilemma. So it's going out as a double shot, to be quite honest with you. They like what they hear from Cynical Silence, and then they turn around and say, hey, wait a minute, these guys actually have a debut album, and they buy that one too. So second edition Ethical Dilemma is doing quite well, and so is Cynical Silence.
Brilliant. So did you have any other titles for the debut album, or was it just said Ethical?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the debut album had a couple of titles, which, of course, because I'm over 50, Alzheimer's is taking, you know, it's.
I'm over 50 as well, but I'm doing all right. That's no excuse. It's no excuse.
You can't remember.
I remember everything, brother. Everything.
Actually, yeah. Well, good on you, man. Honestly, good on you. But the title track was going to be Ethical. Instead of Ethical Dilemma, it was going to be Message to the Masses, which is the first song from the album, from Ethical Dilemma. Very strong, powerful song. It really has every element that VASS-KATSIONIS tries to capture as a project. And it, as a whole, I just loved the sound, the song, everything that it was about. And I said, you know what? To myself, I said, first album, debut album, VASS-KATSIONIS, Message to the Masses. This album is going to be a message to the heavy metal masses, right? And then all of a sudden, a couple of days after, you know, I locked down that title for the album. It just popped up in my head for the rest of the album. Like I said, it's a concept album, has everything to do with ethical dilemmas in one's life. And I said, wait a minute, man, that's just one song. I said, what does this whole album have to offer as a title? What does the person that's going to pick this up as the first thing they're going to read? What are they going to read? Are they going to just read Message to the Masses, which is a song, and then the rest of the album, they're going to have to figure it out? Or let's give them a title where they're going to really understand what's going on in the interior of this album. And that's how I came up with Ethical Dilemma.
Right. Okay, then. So the second album, Cynical Silence. Who came up with the title? What does it mean to everybody out there?
Okay. Cynical Silence is a title track. There's a song on the album with that name, because in Ethical Dilemma, there's no song called Ethical Dilemma. So we have a title track in the second album. It wasn't my first choice. My first choice was turned down by Bob Katsionis. He liked it, but it didn't ring true to him. And he said, okay, we'll see when the album comes out. And that's how I knew he wasn't pleased with my first choice for the album. And then when I sent him the finished product of the song Cynical Silence, he said, there's absolutely no doubt about it. This album is going to be called Cynical Silence. It's brilliant. He said, how did you come up with these two words and you put them together and you came up with this brilliant idea? Just think about it. He goes, Cynical Silence. I mean, it's just, that's the name of the album. And I lost that argument. So instead of my first idea, I had to go with what Bob wanted on that, because he was really adamant about it. He really wanted the album to be called Cynical Silence. What is it about? It's exactly that. Right now, Jason, especially here in Greece, I just feel like the whole community, everyone around us, the whole world actually is going through this numbness. Everything is just so numb with all the politics and all the wars and all the negativity going around, and just no love, absolutely no love in this world anymore. I don't know where or when we're going to find it again. And I just feel like there's this cynical silence just surrounding this planet in general as a whole. Cynical silence, man.